All right, we're almost done. We're doing ANORA today. Welcome to the HolmFront. Hello, welcome. We are nearing the end of February, getting closer to March.
And they're in which the Oscar season as well.
Yep. Yeah, I'm very interested to see how that's gonna go. We're gonna put together probably some predictions here soon
Yes.
and see.
I will be making predictions.
and I'm gonna
You're going to do something.
yeah figure out what I'm doing here. Okay, so we watched a movie the other day. What did we see?
We saw ANORA.
We saw ANORA.
We actually caught it in the theater. They did a re-release. They usually do that for Best Picture nominees, or they've been doing it lately, I guess I should say. So we went out and grabbed it. We were the only two people in the theater, even though other ticket seats were sold.
Yeah, we had checked Fandango or something, and there was like 4 other seats that got sold. I think someone came in like 30 minutes
they did.
late, and then they left like 30 minutes early. It was like
he
didn't like what he saw, I guess.
I guess.
Just took off. It was some couple. Maybe that's why.
Okay. I thought it was a great couples movie, but I mean, sure.
Get into it. Do you have anything you want to announce before we start, by the way?
Yes, briefly.
So this is getting to the end of February. I don't know when
I saw the timeline
All
this
right,
time,
cool.
so I actually know
We
when
know.
people will be seeing.
We actually have some structure. Welcome. We're getting better.
YouTube time is just insane. Yeah, I've been teasing the video for like forever now, but I did finish the first draft edit. So all I have to do now is I'm actually after this I'm going to record a little bit here, just like an epilogue. It's like 2 minutes, and then I'm going to throw that on, tack it on to the end, and then I'm done. So it should be coming out on a Saturday. I'll probably wait till March, I guess, at this point. But yeah.
Okay, so stay tuned. Do you want to tell them what it's about, or are we? Waiting?
Yeah, it's my Metroid commentary. I'm doing a comparison between, because they did so Super Metroid is like a classic greatest games of all time list, and then Metroid Dread was like very much in that vein, and it had came like after a long hiatus from seeing that 2D style of gameplay. So I did a commentary comparing both games, and I had lots of thoughts. So
right.
yeah, it's about an hour long. I think just over an hour.
Cool. Play it at 2 times speed, and it'll be great.
Probably
Okay.
don't. I talk kind of fast in it.
You do. All right, so let's get into ANORA then.
Yeah.
Overall, let's start with this question. Did you like it?
Yeah, I really liked this movie.
Okay.
I thought it was solid.
Yeah, I agree. I was actually surprised. It's better than I thought it was going to be. Minus my nitpicks, we'll get into that. The other thing I wanted to ask, I don't know if we want to put this at the beginning or the end.
Okay.
But I've noticed that we've been kind of inconsistent on it. But we had a rating system with the stars.
Oh yeah.
Do you want to give that at the end, or you want to do it now? You want to kind of give it like.
Well, now that you brought it into the room, I feel
We can rate it at the end, even after we give all of our comments. But I mean, up to you.
I don't know. Actually, no. I think it's best up front because
Okay.
stars. Because here's the thing too. Like when people talk about, especially in like the gaming landscape, there's this real pushback about using point system and star rating for games. People like really hate it. And they hate it, I guess, because they say it doesn't say anything about it. But I push back on that. The star system is great. And the reason why it's great is it's just to give you a general impression of where it is. It's not to tell, like, if you want just a snapshot, like, how is it doing? Like, if you say 90% range, it's like, that's pretty good. And if you said that, like, for Dune Part 2, for example, when that came out, it was holding like 98 for a while, and then it crept down a little bit, but then it's sitting at a comfortable 93. For a science fiction sequel movie, that's really stellar by critic standards, right?
Sure.
So that doesn't tell us what critics liked about it or what's good in the movie or if the movie's any good at all. But it does give us kind of like a snapshot of like kind of what were people picking up on. So that's what I see. And that's why I like the 5-star rating. It's just kind of give me a range of like this the quality of the movie, its merits, right?
Okay. And I think for further, I'm going to try and clip this out, but in our creator video, I think you went into detail as to like what the stars kind of meant to you. Like 1 star is just kind of like, don't even bother. 2 is like, it has 1 or 2 things. 3 is like just kind of a standard, like, all right, you're probably going to have some problems, but it's overall a decent film. 4 is like, all right, it's getting really good. And then 5 is like a Dune 2.
Yeah, 5 is like a masterpiece kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean you won't have problems. That it means that it's a quality film.
Yeah, it could still have
overall.
a few errors here and there, but they have to be really minimal and they have to be nitpicks.
Right.
Yeah.
So did you want to rate this one first, or do you want to do it at the end?
Yeah, 5 stars.
Okay.
I give 5 stars. I have like one minor nitpick, which I might as well do it now. I just didn't really like some of the music choices because it wasn't. I don't even think there's an actual composer on this movie. It was just like he would play like, I want to say like pop songs. It wasn't pop songs, but it was just like something.
More like club music.
Yeah, like
was
club music or
prevailing
whatever.
through the film.
Yeah, but it's actually not very much, and it has these weird abrupt cutoffs where he just is like, all right, next scene, that part's over. But that kind of worked with the mood of the movie because the characters are very like airheaded in the beginning, and so there's a lot of like, all right, we're done with this attitude now.
Moving on. It does summarize the very like carefree nature of the characters quite well. Like it imbibes it, which was great.
Yeah.
So
when I say I don't like the music, let me just jump in here. I just mean that I don't like any lyrical music in my movies. It's always a problem for me. I just want a composer or no music. That's what I want. But so if you don't mind, you probably won't mind. I'm the weird one, so I'm just telling you that's my weird.
Well, then
nitpick.
we have Complete Unknown, which is kind of against that. So I mean,
okay, that's different because
it did use the music to tell the story. So I mean, it is lyrical and it is his music and it's a biopic. So it's
a biopic. So I'll give it
there.
Yeah, it has to be. If it's like about a band, like I expect that.
Sure, like Walk the Line's gotta.
Yeah,
it's gotta have some Johnny Cash in there.
Okay, but what were you gonna say?
Well, I was gonna say let's just say for now we're gonna be getting into spoilers. Not a whole lot necessarily. I'm gonna try and, especially at the end of the film, I'm gonna try and leave that kind of vague. But we do want to go into the effect of the film and the end that it has. So just so you're aware, spoiler territory to some extent. There's not a whole lot of like pivotal moments in the movie that we're gonna be ruining because there's not a whole lot of pivotal moments in the movie in general. Like it's pretty standard to like, I don't know, a set of feelings, I guess. It's much more like imbibing this, I don't know, sweep you off your feet kind of feel.
Yeah.
And it like, and it happens through the whole movie. So I would almost say you could probably summarize the like thesis of the film is this kind of like, it doesn't end that way necessarily, but just this kind of carefree run with the wind kind of mentality that these people have.
Yeah, because it's trying to capture, like you said, like the characters and like the spirit of something. So it spends a lot of time doing that.
That is one thing about this movie. It does not. It takes its sweet time with some of it. It's like no. I don't think you got it yet. We're gonna continue out in this point.
Yeah, let me give just a quick parameter of something that might be useful to know if you're going to see it and you haven't seen it yet. It takes like 40 minutes before the movie actually starts to get going.
But it uses those 40 minutes pretty well.
It does, but it's a lot of like you're gonna be wondering to yourself because we were in the theater. I heard you saying like, "Where are we going with this?" Like 2 or 3 times during that 40 minutes, and I was kind of with you. I was like, "Yeah, we're really not accomplishing a whole lot." And then it switches to this like mid 20-minute scene. It's super long.
It's a scene.
It's a scene, but it completely changes the dynamic of the movie like entirely, and then it becomes a different movie, and all the better for it.
Yeah.
And it's almost like reality kind of cracking down on the characters.
Yeah. It thrives in the contrast, which is where it saves it, which is why it keeps the, I would say 4 star.
Okay.
Because it's a really great movie. It's really well made. I don't have any gripes necessarily except one, and I guess I'll just throw that out there now. It is gratuitous nudity in this film. It's like, holy crap. Just back it off a little bit. I get what the job is, but my gosh. Also, and this is external, so I mean, not to do with the film, but the comparisons this year have been just bizarre. They said this is a modern day Cinderella story. Disagree.
Yeah, I don't really see that at all.
Disagree. I guess in some way it kind of alludes to potentially leading that way, but then it's
like she's poor and he's rich. That's it.
Right. And like he kind of pulls her out of it, but then, the movie goes in a different direction. So it's like, it's not really, she didn't find a prince. Oh, there's the spoilers there for you. In case you didn't see it coming within the first 10 minutes of the movie, that's on you. But yeah, I mean,
Okay, we should back up a little bit and
Yeah, yeah.
explain like the premise of the story. So the premise of the movie is, if you're not familiar, ANORA, it's centered around her as a character. She works at a strip club, so she's a sex worker, and she also does like, I mean, it branches out. Look, I'm not gonna explain everything. You see it in the movie.
yeah. So yeah, to make a distinction, from what I understand, I don't know if stripper is is it considered sex work? Because you're not quite like
That's
there's a lot
actually a
of
good
rules
point.
and regulations there, but she does like side work, which
Yeah, she does like lap dances and stuff. Not necessarily
right, but
but she
outside of the
does
strip club, she does delve into prostitution on some on some level.
right.
So
Yeah.
technically, yes, I guess, but it's not like she's not getting her W-2 for sex work. It's the strip work
Yeah.
that anyway.
Well, it's
I know
within
it's
the
a fine
industry,
line.
I guess is
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. I mean, but that's partly what makes the movie so interesting though, because this is a drama and comedy movie.
Yeah.
And it is genuinely both.
I did not know that this was a comedy movie when I went in.
I didn't either.
Yeah, which kind of made it better for me, especially that scene, which we're going to get into, that really flips the film into what it's going to be.
Yeah.
It does an expert job at doing that, and so
Yeah.
it really helped you like figure out what the shift was, and help you shift with it, because like I said, it takes its time.
Yeah. Yeah,
but
because
your point.
that first part, I mean, it spends 40 minutes and it's almost like a travel log or something. You're following like
Yeah.
dumb teenagers with
Right.
just like a camera, a camcorder, and they're going around just getting into trouble and spending money flagrantly and just like, like there's this one guy, the actor they got for Yvonne.
He's great.
Is the guy? He's like this rich Russian kid that he's like seeing ANORA. He meets her at the club, and then he wants to like kind of initiate a relationship with her. And like, there's this shot of him, like he just had so much energy. It was hilarious. Like like he pops open like a champagne bottle, and it's like spraying everywhere. But like he's like bouncing up and down and like, and you're just like, all right, this is way too much. And the movie just lets that play out as just like this found footage almost of all their escapades. And then it's sort of like after that 40 minutes, it's like an actual director comes in and is like, all right, now I'm making a movie. And then it shuts them all up because they were being dumb teenagers. And that's exactly what happens in the story. It's all the adults find out, all of his family, and they're like, what are you doing? You're marrying this girl? Who is she? Absolutely not. And so they're cracking down.
So to back up a little bit,
Yeah.
So yeah, she's a stripper. This kid comes in. His name is Yvonne. He basically they developed like a connection because he's this like 21-year-old. So he's like really young, and so he's a lot more like innocent, not kind of like a regular, in the strip club. And so he has this kind of innocent charm about him that she latches onto because she seems very world weary and she's seen it and
She's
been
street
there.
smart, yeah.
And so to see that, there was this contrast between the two characters. And so he invites her to come over to his house. And then when she's there the first time, invites her basically to spend a week with him. Is like, let me take you away from that for a week. I'll pay you way more than you'll get at the strip club. And we'll do all this stuff, like go on an adventure, essentially. And through this adventure, they fall in love, their 20-year-old selves.
Yeah.
And so he proposes to her, and she says yes. And so that's like that first bit of the film is this adventure that leads to this climax. And I'll just skip the rest because that's all that happens that's substantive. The rest of it is just partying and clubs, and they have their friends with them, and they're doing drugs and all kinds of things. But then, see, he's the son of a rich Russian oligarch who finds out about this and calls, what's his name? Toros,
yeah.
Calls
It's
to-
like his handler.
This is the handler of the son in the States where Yvonne is hanging out. And Yvonne is in this like lavish estate that his father owns. It's just one of his many properties in America. And basically, the rest of the film is Toros and his two friends trying to get a handle on this situation before the oligarch shows up and wreaks havoc.
Yeah,
And
they want to get the marriage annulled,
Right.
Because it's like
because he can't marry a prostitute. You're a rich oligarch's son. You can't just go Yeah, we
Right.
have an image to uphold.
Well, yeah, because they're trying to do some deal, I think, is the other thing. And they're like, shoot, if like they find out about this, they're going to cancel everything.
Sure.
So
'Cause this is
absolutely not. This is
disrespectful or
just not
whatever,
going to
yeah.
happen. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, for every reason imaginable
Yeah.
and from their perspective, but also that. So they're the two teeny bopper. I mean, I guess they're in their 20s, but like they're like teeny boppers. And they're, like, we're in love and you can't tell us that.
Right.
And then it's like,
So
it looks so silly once the adults come in.
Yeah.
And because you're thinking they're going like, yeah, this is pretty silly, but maybe the movie kind of wants me to just go with it. And then like
Well,
it
it
shows up
almost
and it's like,
sounds
not really.
they can redeem each other. That's what it feels like it's going, right?
Yeah.
Because he's a rich oligarch son and she's the stripper / prostitute or whatever. They get together and it seems like maybe they'll balance themselves out. But they never really do.
No.
They just kind of, it's all based on their sex life essentially, which they show a lot of. And so it's just passion instead of actual love. And so he buys her a ring because he can and gives her a house because he can. And then Toros finds out about it. And he's like, my butt's on the line if I don't figure this out. Like it's gonna kill me. So he shows up, and that's where this movie shifts. Now the adults arrived.
Yeah.
And so we'll get into the scene now because this is like a 20-minute scene, and I was sitting
so
there.
good.
It's so great because I was thinking like, is this overstaying its welcome? But I am having so much fun with this thing. It's hilarious. So they show up, and Ivan, the male love interest, freaks out. He's like, "You can't come in here. This is my house." Blah blah blah. And then his father's mentioned, and he's like, "Your father's coming in tomorrow. We've got to figure this out before he gets here." And he's like, "Oh no!" And runs away. He just leaves. He leaves.
Well, and he's, and ANORA is there like, I don't know these people. I don't know what's going on.
But she's
so
gonna stick up for him. So she's like got his back, and then
And
he just like takes off.
Well, he's trying to get her to come with. He's like, come on. And she's like,
go.
I can't. She's like,
I gotta get dressed.
I gotta get dressed. Like I'm literally wearing just like
Right, whatever
nothing
it was.
here, just like a t-shirt. Like I gotta put something on. And he's like, come on. Ah, whatever. Stop it.
So he goes
What?
running down the street in like jeans and a sweatshirt.
Yeah.
And maybe some shoes he threw on. And she's like upstairs trying to get her stuff together.
Right.
Tries to leave, and the bodyguard won't let her.
Yeah.
So the rest of that scene is like legitimately them trying to keep her in the house.
She's giving them so much grief because they have this shot of the two bodyguards going up to the house. They're driving in the car, and like one of them is explaining the situation to the other, and the other guy's like, "Why am I here? Like,
Yeah,
what am I doing?" Like he doesn't really have like he's just some guy. He's like I'm just trying to do you guys a favor. I'm getting paid here. Like, I don't even know what I'm getting paid for yet.
Right.
So he shows up and it's like, well, our goal is to keep this woman from leaving the house. And he's like, okay. And then she like tries to bail and he's like, oh, no. And he's like trying to be like super patient with her.
He doesn't like touch her. He's just standing in front of the door so she can't get out. And it's like,
and then she starts like throwing stuff at him and he's like, and then she's like biting people and stuff. And then, like
she straight up punches the dude. She breaks the one guy's nose, which is a running theme through the movie.
She like kicks him.
And she headbutts the other guy and like punches him. So the thing about it is, he finally was like, "I can't do this." So he wraps her up in a bear hug and just holds her on the couch, and she starts screaming. And she's screaming like, "Rape, rape!" And he's like, "I have no interest in any of this. My job is to keep you from leaving, and you're really mean. You've been hitting me. So this is the only way I could do this." So he's like holding her on the couch, and that's when Toros arrives. "What are you doing?" He's like, "You don't understand."
He's like, "You're tying her up. You can't do this."
Yeah. He gets the like cable. He gets a cord from this lamp, and he's like tying her hands and feet. He's like, "What's wrong with you? We can't do this."
Right.
So here's the thing. They play on your presuppositions of the film because there are these Russian guys that are, you're not really sure what exactly that they do. And he just kind of lets you guess. And he plays it expertly because you think, okay, so this is like, this might be some like mob boss and they might come in and like kill them or, they might be terrible. But then
is this a Scorsese picture? What's happening?
Exactly. But then they don't. And the tying up is only because he's afraid of her. Because he's
right.
she's hurting us.
So she's like biting them and breaking their noses.
She has no limits as to what she's going to do to get out. And so he's just doing what he has to not get hurt anymore. So it's hilarious because you think that they're willing to go this extreme and they're not, but she is. And so she's forcing him into this decision. And so what Toros walks into is him literally laying on top of her on the couch, wrapped her in a bear hug, like, if I let go, she's gonna do more damage.
She's gonna run. She's
gonna break stuff. So he comes in, the table's all busted up, the vase is like on the floor, probably priceless. And he's like, "What happened in here? You guys were just supposed to prevent them from leaving." And then he looks over at Igor. And he's like, "What are you doing? Why are you holding her like that? Why is she tied up?" And then what happens? Because I remember Taurus is the one that runs into the gag. So
she starts screaming bloody murder.
They start to talk again, and then she finds out that Taurus is also not going to help the situation, so she like loses it.
Yeah.
And he runs into the other room, grabs this like red handkerchief thing, and comes running back with it. He's like, "Ah!" And then the next scene, she's there with like it in her mouth. It's like a gag.
And he's like, "We're going to be calm now. We're going to remove the gag. We're going to explain the situation. We're going to talk about it." And she's like, exasperated.
So the reason that we've gone so long on this scene is because it's literally like 20 minutes.
Yeah, it's a huge chunk of the movie.
And it's making sure that you understand that all your presuppositions have to switch.
Yep.
You thought this was a drama, not a drama. You thought that these guys were like maybe possibly mob bosses. They're not. And then you thought maybe there was some kind of solution here. There isn't.
You thought they were going to fall in love and they would be happily ever after.
Run away.
That's not happening.
Yeah, it's not happening.
Yeah.
And so the adults are here. It's going to be fairly comedic for sure, but it's switching the tone of the film.
Yeah.
And he does a really good job of switching it, even with the long scene. Because like I said, I was wondering if it was overstaying its welcome, but I was having so much fun with it that I was like, this is the best part of the movie.
Honestly, it reminds me of older pictures that would do like a play adaptation, and almost everything is just like in one room or one like apartment, something, and just all the comedy of errors that unravel. So it was like a throwback to that, and it was just so enjoyable. I was like, man, this is great. Like, it just kept going, and I was like, man, there's more to this scene. We're not done yet. Okay. Yeah, just such a great time.
It was.
And gosh, yeah. Okay, so where do we segue from here?
I was gonna see. Did you have any further comments on the fight scene?
On the fight scene. Okay, so here's what I will say. Like, so in that scene, they it kind of like after it calms down a little bit, they start hashing through like the hard logistics of what's going on.
Right.
And I thought that was actually really well written too, because he explains to her, he's like, look, he's not going to stay married to you. You're going to get an annulled. That's what's going to happen because, this is he has all the reasons we gave. Like, he's part of this oligarch. He can't do this. This is just typical. What's his name? Ivan. That's what his name is. This is just typical Ivan, and he doesn't love you. It's just in your head, like you're just all mixed up. And he even goes so far, he's like, that ring he bought you, that's with his father's money. We're gonna have to bring that back.
This is his father's. This is all his father's. He has nothing. He's a wild idiot child.
Right.
Also, okay, I do want to go back, and they portrayed the importance of this whole event by how Toros goes to help. The Toros is a Catholic priest, and he's ordaining this child. So he's like doing this baptism, and he straight up gets a phone call, and he has to take it because it's Ivan's father. So he like leaves, goes to the back of the Catholic church in his robes, and then he comes back out in front of the whole family. He's like, I've got to go. I'm sorry. Takes off his robe and he leaves the church. So it shows you the importance of like the power that they have.
Yeah.
Without necessarily showing who he is or what he does. But now this person, this Catholic priest that has left this baptism to come and tell this girl, like, this is not what you think it is. It's not going to last. It's not real. You're an idiot. He's an idiot. We've got to get this annulled. Otherwise, everyone's going to be in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Big trouble. As soon as he gets here tomorrow, like, we don't know what he's going to do, but you're not going to like it.
Yeah.
And so he's explaining all this and the logistics of why.
Yeah. And the interesting thing about it is the movie has prepped us for this scene because we start with her like just her daily life working in the club
Right.
and all of her interactions with the
patrons,
patrons. Yeah, I guess we'll call them. And then also like the conversation she has with her coworkers there and some of the interactions that they're having with these men.
Which all seem really healthy and
yeah, seriously. And then that's interspersed with like her life at home. Like she goes home and sleeps during the day, and then she's got this contentious relationship with her sister.
She lives with her sister and the sister's boyfriend.
Yeah,
and how that goes at home.
Yeah, and so it's just it's like it was a really clear snapshot, really great editing as well. Like I was rewatching a little bit of it, and there was like just the way it intersperses the interaction she's having with the patrons was interesting because it's almost like she's having a conversation with one, and then at the edit, it makes it seem like you're in a different angle. But it's actually a new patron.
Yeah.
But it's like it may as well be the same person because what does it matter? Like they're all just exchangeable is the whole idea. So I thought that was really cleverly done. But, we get that snapshot and it's like, she's kind of on dire straits. This isn't like what she wants to do for her whole life. This isn't like,
It's really showing you the pointlessness of it all. It's just like,
yeah, it's her job. She works all night, and it's a pretty thankless job, honestly, when you think about it. And so like, just the fact that it depicted that was nice. But then when you get into this other scene, some of the meaner language to sex workers starts to come out from some of these guys, and so they're calling her some names, and she's from New York, so she can hold her own, and she just like throws it right back.
I think it's Jersey.
I'm pretty sure that's in New York.
I'll have to look that up.
I'm almost positive it's New York, but anyways, yeah, she's like a tough cookie. She's been around the block. She's street smart, as I said. So she kind of keeps pace with them, but then there's like these weird or not weird, but these moments that kind of scale things back a little bit because Toros tells her, he's like, Yvonne pulled you into this, and you're gonna have to be compensated in some way. He can't just tell you all this stuff and have you come away with nothing. That's wrong. So he's like, we're going to give you like, it's like $50,000 or something like that. He comes up with some number. I forget how it's arranged. It's like to settle this or whatever. And he's like, how about that? And she like pauses and seems to really like think about that.
Well, it's after he's said everything about Yvonne and then really made her think about where she is and what she's doing. So it's not really just an issue of the amount of money at that point. It's more of like, okay, I've got to put myself through a reality check. If I fight for Yvonne, he's already run out on me.
Yeah.
So is this something that I want to fight for, or should I just take my out now? Considering I'm probably going to have reality hit me in the face and not have some kind of compensation. So it did a really good job of depicting, too, that she's not just there. She's not just going to accept the money and leave. It's more of like, I have to consider that this person is just one of those patrons that was just in that revolving door. He just happens to be a really rich one.
Yeah.
And a lot younger, so he's a little bit more carefree and wild. But is he someone that's actually worth fighting for and actually worth, maintaining a marriage with? And it does a great job of like, she's obviously not an idiot, but, you could tell that she wanted something more than what she had. And Yvonne looked like he had that thing, but then she had to remind herself like, no, this probably isn't what it seems to be. And so like, in that moment, she does all that with her face.
Yeah.
Which is was well casted, by the way.
Yeah, Mickey Madison was phenomenal in this. Just really, really stellar.
Great nuances with all the troubles that come with that type of work.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't just demonizing, whatever your issues are in that realm of the world. It doesn't just demonize her, but it also doesn't glorify anything that she's doing either. It kind of
treats her like a person.
Right.
It's so refreshing.
She's a human being that is making these poor decisions, which are, these decisions that can be
as like every youth does.
Right. Yeah, like I said, I mean, whatever your positions are, I know we both have opinions on it, but we're trying to like portray that this film is not trying to like beat you over the head with one or the other. It's just saying like, this is the scenario that this person found herself in and what she does with it. And it, she obviously has nuance. She's intelligent. And having a hard time with it.
Well, yeah, and like think of it this way: like, what does he depict? He depicts her working at a tough job, trying to make ends meet, getting swept off her feet, but also with someone who doesn't inspire a lot of confidence.
Right.
Who can't relate to that?
Sure.
You know what I mean? So like that's the focus of the
It
story.
seems so romantic, which is where it has similarities with the Cinderella thing.
Mm-hmm.
They kind of end
makes
there,
sense.
though.
Yeah, basically. Okay, but what I wanted to say about that scene in particular is that she hesitates, thinks about it, but she says, "I want to talk to Yvonne." And so she like maintains that loyalty throughout because she knows like, hey, that's what like a good partner's supposed to do. And so she's like, I'm in this committed. At least this is what she's saying, right?
Right.
But like the back and forth conflict and like the ulterior motivations, I don't think it speaks ill of her that she's like considering the money because I think we all would in that situation.
If he ran out like that, yeah.
Yeah, because like he just ran out like
he
and
abandoned me.
And there's plenty of scenes as long as the opening is. There's a lot of stuff in there where you can kind of like read her thoughts or her processing this relationship. Like he's like playing video games and stuff,
right?
And she's like, she's not upset that he's playing video games. She's more just like
he's irresponsible.
To the
nth degree.
Yeah, she's like, I don't know, like your parents, do they know about me? Like, is everything kosher? Like reasonable questions, you know? And he's just like, I don't know, they suck.
Yeah. And she just goes along with it because he said it. And then is later like, maybe there is some nuance to these arguments. Maybe he's just saying it to get away from the discussion.
Right.
It's inevitable discussion. But he avoids the inevitable. He avoids responsibility, classically. It's just constantly. Yeah. So anyway, you can read all that on her face, as you were saying, like, in that moment. But again, she still lands on, well, I want to talk to Yvonne. She's still giving him a chance and showing that she has some form of character.
Yeah, she has way more integrity than he does. Right. The whole thing.
He's just this dumb little idiot.
Yeah. Okay, so I feel like we've covered quite a bit.
We have.
What else do we need to like make sure we cover and try to without getting into like that spoiler territory yet? Is there anything else?
I don't think so. I think
we have to just unwrap the present.
Well, yeah. Do we want to jump much further into? Because, like, I feel like, again, with just some of those caveats on my end, you know, if you're looking for my personal opinion with the gratuitous nudity, the themes of the film are actually interesting, and it is a well-made film. It's just it doesn't pull any punches with the sex worker thing. Like it's like going all the way and making sure you understand what she does multiple times. Outside of that, though, no, I don't think I have too many other comments.
My only other spoiler, because I don't know how spoiler we're going to get. We're going to do our best, but like going to be revealing more of the specifics, especially in the latter half of the movie. This is a movie worth seeing, and it's worth not having spoiled for you.
Sure.
So I would strongly suggest, if you haven't seen it, stop watching now. Go see it.
Yeah, if none of this has deterred you, then you'll enjoy the film. So.
Yeah, it's totally worth a watch. Okay, so that said... Spoilers full on out. Okay, so... they go on this like
adventure.
They all pile into the car and they're gonna find Yvonne. And it's just like them cruising around downtown, going to every place conceivably imaginable that he might be. And they spend like, I don't even know how long on this.
It's probably another 40 minutes to an hour looking for Yvonne.
It's a long time. And so they're just hitting up all these different places, getting into misadventures. Some guys throwing up in the car, and then they can't get the smell out
because he hasn't fixed or dressed his nose. So
he's like, I need to go to the hospital, and then shut up.
And then he pukes, and then it smells in the car the rest of the drive. They park where they're not supposed to, so it almost gets towed, and he like rips it off the repo man's car. It is a disaster.
Yeah.
But he's like, we have to find Yvonne and annul this marriage before the oligarch gets here.
Right.
So this whole section is specifically to show what the motivations are, but also what ANORA has to go through in this search.
Mm-hmm.
Because she, over time, is because like we know. I figured it out as soon as they left. I was like, we know exactly where he is.
Right.
It
took me a little longer because I'm so naive when it comes to movies, but I did figure it out long before them.
I'm not saying that I'm like, I don't want to say I'm better than this. Like, I'm just saying I knew where he was. Like, it just was clear.
You called it, and then I called it later on, but I did eventually call it. So, yeah, it was not that well. But Yvonne's a predictable person.
He is, absolutely.
So we all know what he was
doing.
doing.
Piece of crap. So, yeah, the thing about it that's interesting, though, is that these guys they haven't been following Yvonne around. So they're like they're just following ANORA because ANORA is the one that's like pointing out the places where they need to look.
Yeah, that's a good
What's
point.
interesting about it is that it's ANORA not wanting to face reality. She wants to choose all the more responsible places before she chooses where she knows he probably is and doesn't want to accept, which makes it all the sadder. Because
Yeah.
she's, like I said, she really thinks that she's discovered the Cinderella story and thinks that she's made an escape.
And she quit her job for this.
Right. She walked out on her job, kind of burned some bridges. Like,
Imagine walking back into that.
yep. Which is what she ends up doing.
Like, that's rough because
Yep.
now you got to walk in there after you just told everybody I found, like, my Prince Charming,
Yep.
and I'm not going to have to do this
See
kind of
you
work
guys
anymore.
later. Walked
And then
out
it's
with two
like,
middle fingers. And,
you
yeah.
got to walk back in and be like, oh, well, he turned out to be not a great person. It's like,
Right.
geez, that's awful.
Yep. So they spend all night looking. She finally figures it out that he's gone back to the strip club where she met her in the first place, and they go. And one of her rivals is like trying to take this opportunity to really rub it in Honora's face, and read into that what you will. But they go and they find him, and he's just wasted. He's the entire night he's spent doing drugs, drinking, kind of wandering around all these less than reputable spots, and provides no avenue for communication. She thinks that finding him means that she can save this marriage. Like, we can now stand together and be like, doesn't matter what is standing against us, we're gonna make this work. This trash kid is not capable of talking about any of that.
Which is like, funny, but also heartbreaking because she's like, look, you got to explain to these people. Like, I can't do it. For one, because they don't know me, they don't trust me, and they don't
all
like
I am
my
to them
profession.
is a prostitute that's ruining your reputation and by proxy your father's.
So you have to communicate to them that we're in love and that you're serious about this.
And he can't at first. And you're seeing over on her face as the night progresses, because we're getting closer to morning now when the oligarch is going to show up, that hope is beginning to leave ANORA, and that she's going to have to face some harsh realities in the near future. So as that's happening, Yvonne is now slowly coming back to consciousness. But within all that, there's a courtroom scene. And what had happened was they get married in Vegas, which is
in one of their escapades.
In one of their escapades, they get married in Vegas, which is not where they're at. So where they're at, which I'm pretty sure is Jersey, but I'm gonna have to look it up. It's not Vegas. When they go to the courtroom there, the lawyer's like, you can't get it annulled here because you guys didn't get married here. So you've got to go back to Vegas to annul it there, and then you can figure it out. So there's an interesting scene in there. I guess we'll just go over it since we're going through the spoiler territory. So the mom and the father arrive. They were supposed to have been done with the annulment by then. They're not, so they have to tell them. Koros goes up and he's like, so we have to go to Vegas to do this. He's like terrified about it. And it's not the father that's the worst. It's the mom. Mom comes in.
She's intense.
She is a piece of work. So
mildly.
So all this kind of crescends, right? The courtroom scene it's another racket. That was it was a hilarious scene. The judge was a patient man, we'll say that. So they go outside, and ANORA is now fighting for whatever semblance of dignity she's got left, because she's having to face all these people alone, while Yvonne basically ignores her, because he's finally come back to some semblance of competency, and he's not standing up for her, especially when Mom arrives. When Mom arrives, he just becomes a sniveling mess and is like basically not wanting to acknowledge the reality of the past, however long that they've spent together, this week or whatever it is. And is basically trying to make excuses to his mom, and Mom's trying to coddle him, but also is like so nasty to ANORA.
Yeah.
So ANORA fights back. There's this pivotal scene where she's like, hey, we all have to get on the plane, this private jet, go back to Vegas. You're going to annul this marriage, and then we're going to be done. You are not going to be seeing my son anymore. Yvonne's not going to come back, and it's just done. And ANORA she has a moment in there where she bites back at the mom. She's like, I didn't sign a prenup, so you're going to have to wait for a divorce, and I'm taking half. And I was like, all right. I was like rooting for it at that point. I was like, yeah, good for you. Like, yeah, stick it to these guys, because he lied to you this whole movie. Mom's just a nasty person. Like, just, ugh. might as well get something out of it.
He's the one who proposed, not her. This was his idea.
Yeah, this is all him. So he's going to have to take responsibility. Problem was that the mom is like, we have way more money than you do. Well, we can drag this out way past the point where you're going to be able to fight. So
she like threatens her. It's just like, what chance do you think you have?
Right.
It's really nicely executed.
Yeah.
I think we already said that all the casting was great, but yeah, she came in, and for coming in so late in the movie, and
she did
her
a great
just
job.
like just this spiteful, nasty like bee sting is just like, that's not happening. Get on the plane. And it was just like, what power do you think you have? I was like, sheesh, lady.
Yep. It was nasty.
She's just a kid. Like, oh my God.
But you got the point. I mean, you understood the position that ANORA found herself in. So now she gets on the plane, they annul the marriage. So during this whole film, sorry, I've been talking a lot. Do you have any other points you'd like to add on to
Not
this?
on that scene.
Okay.
No, I'll let you finish your thought, and then I have some other stuff.
Oh, well, I'm
going to pull us into the end, by the way, when you go back to me.
Well, I was going to say throughout this whole thing, one of the bodyguards, Igor, the one that had held her down on the couch, at first, didn't want to be there, and then was forced into a position he really hated, and then was having to spend this whole night. But he's the one that's just kind of quietly, passively, like, patiently watching everything and observing.
Yeah.
And
he did such a good job of just being this, like...
You can tell he's contemplating each interaction and taking in all the details and all the nuance. And he is slowly watching ANORA and how she's handling and how she's being taken advantage of by everybody.
Yeah.
And he develops this hardcore sympathy, and he, in little ways, tries to show it, even though she just kind of bites back at him each time. Because she's, obviously she's been through a rough life. She doesn't accept these nice gestures very well, because Yvonne was different, because he's just there for the sex, and then kind of get whisked away into this romance that she kind of goes in. But he's not tender. He's not like trying to break down vulnerabilities. Igor does. He's like, hey, I'm recognizing this reality. This is all really crappy. This is like, regardless of what got you here, like, you don't deserve to be treated this way.
And it's not in words. Right. The interesting thing. He says basically nothing.
Right. He offers his jacket, or like unties her, or like sits next to her. Like, just kind of small things throughout the movie. And it's fun to see like the vulnerability slowly break down from her, and like how he's just gently patient regardless of how mean she is.
Like she's mean, and she's like telling him to get lost and take a hike, but he can't because it's his job. And so he's just like,
but he's also like,
the balance off.
Yeah, he doesn't take any of it personally.
Yeah, he doesn't. I mean, he's just a rock. He's just like no, like the way they're treating you is wrong. Like, that's still the point that he won't let go of.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter what she does. Because he's not wrong. Right. He just is a voice of the audience. The audience is like, yeah.
What with that guy? He's the best. The best part of, aside from the end, which I'll let you take, the best part, though, is when they get the marriage annulled, they're sitting in this, whatever it is, chapel thing in Vegas. None of it's serious.
Office space or whatever.
Yeah, and so they're signing all this paperwork, whatever. He stands up at the end, and it's really interesting because this is his boss. These very powerful oligarchs, this man and his wife.
But also, I don't know how much he is a regular of working with them.
True.
Because he was pretty
Well, he
unawares.
works with Toros, and
he
kind
works
of
with Toros.
like third party. Anyway, it doesn't matter, but he's kind of gotten the point. I mean, he's Russian. So he's well aware of their status, at least, or who they could be. Maybe not specifically, but what kind of power they could yield. But he stands up and he says, "Hey, now this is all over." He's the one that's supposed to escort ANORA back to where they came from, get her money, and then kind of resolve the issue. But he stands up and he says, "Hey, I want Yvonne to apologize to ANORA."
Yeah, he's like, I don't think it's my place, or maybe it's not my place, but I feel like Yvonne owes her an apology or something like that.
She deserves an apology. It doesn't happen, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
The point was that Igor was someone honorable that realized what had happened here and picked up all the nuances of the situation and figured out that ANORA was the one that was wronged.
Yeah.
Ultimately, and that Yvonne was the one careless enough to have allowed the situation to go where it was, and decided to stand up for her for that.
Yeah, he goes back to, like, he grounds the situation as, like, let's go back to, like, the source of what did happen. Now that it's settled, the dust is over.
Right.
Let's end with some integrity and respect.
Yeah, you could at least give her that.
Yeah, at least right. He just feels like I just feel like this is kind of a thing that needs to be said, like in the
Right.
room. It has to be said as part of the
Be a man.
process of
Develop a little bit.
exactly.
You've
Yeah,
been this carefree, wild, idiot child. Like, maybe take
yeah,
some responsibility in this one moment. Since everyone knows it's all in the open anyway, like everyone's aware of what happened, you could just apologize at this point.
yeah,
He doesn't. He doesn't grow up, which is it does multiple things. It develops Igor's character. It solidifies everything that Anora has been suspecting all along, but it also shows you who Yvonne was, because he's not changed.
yeah.
So who he was and now still is,
Mm-hmm.
just this coddled mother's child. Because mom is the one that stands up. It's like, you didn't know anything. It's just awful.
Well, yeah,
nasty
she speaks
woman.
for him, and then he
Right.
just lets her
And he
do
doesn't
that.
say anything. Yvonne just
Yeah.
sits there and doesn't even acknowledge Anora at all.
Yeah.
So Anora has her final words, which were kind of fun, and then they leave.
Well, those final words. Let's talk at least a minute about
Sure.
that. So basically, she gets upset by this, as she should, and she throws it back, and she starts name calling Yvonne because now she's had it. It's over.
Right.
Whatever. I don't need to be a loyal wife anymore. So she says that, but then she calls him, and she's like, she says something to the effect of like, the only reason why, or something about like he hates you.
Oh, yeah,
more.
he starts telling the parents what Yvonne has been saying.
Yeah.
And then calls out the mom. Like, you're a horrible piece of work and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And then the dad starts cracking up.
He
This-
just is dying.
This crazy
He's in hysterics.
oligarch is just losing it. Because you could tell kind of the dynamics where mom is just around throwing her weight around all over the place. So he probably just kind of caters because he's like, I don't really want to argue, so you can have what you want. So her princess treatment has extended down to Yvonne. So now that someone's finally standing up and saying something about it, he just starts laughing. He's just sitting in the corner, just cracking up.
It's like he kind of likes Anora
Right.
now.
It's
Maybe he
like-
probably would have been fine with it.
It's like, whatever.
Long term.
You guys could get married again if you want.
It's like he liked her more
Right.
than he liked his own son. It was just kind of, again, another one of those moments where the film it's telling its story, and then it has
Yep.
these really human moment just like take over.
Well, it tells it without telling you about it. It just, that moment happens, and like, it's not saying, you don't know anything about this family dynamic. You haven't met the dad, you haven't met the mom. You just have these interactions that they've had, the ones that we've gone over already. That's pretty much it. And it just within this, just him laughing about that whole interaction told you everything you needed to know without having to tell you anything.
Yeah.
And it's really brilliant in those moments. Like, well directed, well written.
Okay. So moving past that, they go home. And this is where the movie like really kicked into gear, and I was like, "Oh man, this is
Keep in mind, this is like
interesting."
the last 10 minutes or so.
Yeah, like the very end bit. So they go back, but I really want to discuss this scene because I really thought about it afterwards. I was like, "That's really interesting how they discussed this." So it's now just Yura and Anora. So Yura is, of course, the guy who
Igor.
Igor.
Yura's his actual name.
Yura's his actual name, yeah, the actor's name. So he's the one who was like trying to keep her from leaving the house, put her in the bear hug or whatever, and then he like, and so then he was kind of slightly supporting her. At least he was just trying to be like just a stable foundation to keep things like calm and okay. So, anyways, he has the last assignment of making sure that she gets paid and that she can
Makes it
collect her
home.
stuff at the house and gets home okay. So it's just the two of them, and they're basically not saying anything to each other. They don't talk at all. They just kind
They're
of go
hanging
into
out
motions.
in the same house that her and Yvonne were hanging out. And I forgot that they actually call him Vanya through most of the movie. It's like Ivania or something, but they go by both. Anyway, we've called him Yvonne this whole
that's
film,
right.
but Vanya was like the common one. I was
Yeah, it
just
looks
looking
like
up.
Ivan and then whatever.
Yvonne, whatever.
Yvonne.
So
whatever.
they're staying at that same house where they had, done all their previous activities after and before marriage.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, yeah. So it's their last night at the house, and they're just like watching some TV, and then they get into this conversation, and it was just really fascinating because she's really cold and she's really mean, and a part of it is like, all right, well, she just went through this nightmarish divorce, so I can't blame her for just being a little frazzled. The other thing about it, though, is that it stems from something else too, because it does feel like she starts to target him after a while, and it's like, dude. He wasn't he did nothing wrong. And if you're really thinking about this honestly, you would know that.
Mhm.
And instead,
She's just
not
lashing out.
She's just lashing out.
Yeah.
And she lashes out at him because he can't do anything about it. Because he's poor just like her. Like, where's he going to go?
Yeah.
Like,
He has no leverage.
Yeah, he has no leverage over her. So she just kind of vents her frustrations and lets him be a punching bag for all of that. And then it starts to get really personal. And she says this really cruel line where she's like, if Toros and the other guy hadn't been there, you would have raped me. That's what would have happened.
It was more along the lines of like if you were a real man or something, or if you. It was weird because he was questioning like, why are you so mad, or like what did you think I was gonna do? And then she turns with that line, and I was like, goodness, what do you expect from people? But it was an interesting perspective into what she viewed people as.
Well, especially because, like, remember, how did this movie start?
Right.
She's in a strip club.
Yeah.
And there's this really interesting, gross, but interesting conversation exchange she has with one of her coworkers where they're describing an interaction they had with one of these men. And she's like, oh, they're like smoking outside or something. And she's like, oh, he said that you remind me of my daughter or something. Let's keep going.
Ooh.
And they were like, ew, that's so gross. And as an audience, you're like,
so
that's disgusting.
So casual.
Yeah, to them, it was just like, oh, wow, that's
Tuesday.
gross, whatever. Another Tuesday. Yeah, basically.
Ugh.
So her environment, I feel like, was kind of coming out in that moment.
Right.
And here Igor is, and he's like, whoa, I don't have any context for that. And then she's like, oh, yeah, give me one good reason why you wouldn't have done that. And he's like, because I'm not a rapist.
Oh, that's right. I forgot. It's like pretty standard reason.
But it was just kind of fascinating how this whole movie, and not like pervasively, not to the point where it was like hammering home a message or the point where it was frustrating, but it was just like enough to where you noticed it was like, all right, they're calling her a few less than nice words because of her background and what she does for a living.
Yep.
That's coming through. Not from Igor, but from everybody else. And then, here they are in this scene, and that she's like, well, here's now my chance to do it back. And he's like, oh, well, that's not very nice.
To the only person in the movie who didn't deserve it, by the way.
Who didn't deserve it. Right. He didn't deserve it. But he kind of he doesn't let it harm him. It just bounces off, and he just like.
Well, he kind of absorbs it and considers it. And he's like, this is different than what she's saying. And then just doesn't respond at all. He's just like, okay.
It's like he knows. He's like, I don't really feel like you mean that. But even if you do, I'm not going to let it hurt my spirits. I know I'm not a rapist.
It's not true. Right.
I know it's not true, so it doesn't matter. So it's kind of just interesting to see that dynamic play out. And then it kind of, I don't know, it was just such a fascinating way to like reverse the roles essentially, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like the consensus is like how mean people are to sex workers, particularly women, for the line of work that they have. And again, regardless of how you feel about that, they still need to be treated like human beings. They need to be treated with respect. That just goes for everybody. And, when they flip that around and it's like, here's how, I guess women or people in general are treating men, it was like, oof, that stings. But that's just in popular culture. That doesn't even have to do with actually working in a particular industry. So it was just fascinating how it was kind of unearthing, like, here's some like gross things that people say to each other with regards to gender. And you got to see, and how it didn't really matter. Like, you were never going to be the exact innocent person in the room.
Sure.
You're going to be implicated in some way probably. And it was like, ouch. So I thought that was really poignant.
It was a good contrast. Because even without necessarily the larger narrative, it was a good way of saying, like, ANORA is also not this blameless victim. She's also got some preconceived notions that have been created by this environment in which she spends her time. And so it gives her this view of the world that's not necessarily correct, but also she feels like she has to have those walls up in order to keep herself safe, essentially.
Exactly.
Even to people that she doesn't need to keep herself safe from, who have proved repeatedly that they have no intention of harming her or breaking through those walls without her consent.
But she wasn't really factoring him in.
Right.
He's not on her.
He didn't exist as someone outside this world that she knew.
Right, exactly. Because in her mind, she's like, well, I'm just focused on Yvonne and myself and trying to get this relationship to work.
And now projecting all this stuff onto the good guy.
Right. And then he has to take the brunt of it. But, like a good gentleman, he just takes it and is like, all right, well.
Sure. I'm not a rapist, so I don't need to prove that.
I don't need to worry about
Well, actually, I've already proven it, so I prove it by not doing it.
by not doing it.
Each
Yeah,
moment.
exactly.
Look at that.
Yeah. So yeah, it was just kind of really, I don't know, really, really fascinating. So then after this scene, we get into the climax of the movie, like the final crescendo. He takes her home.
What a word.
Yeah. So he takes her home, and
That scene's fun too, because the car. Oh, were you gonna get into that?
yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
What were we gonna say?
Well, because he gets in, or she gets in, and she's like, "Is this your car?" I forget. It's like something like this.
Oh.
It seems like your car, and he's like, "It's my grandma's car."
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Okay.
It's so nice. He's like, he takes care of his grandma, so he's just got her
course he
car,
does.
and he's just taking her home, and she's beating him up for it.
Yeah. Okay, so here's the thing too. When he says that line, it's a callback to what was said earlier, because
Right.
Yvonne gives her something that belongs to his
His mom.
grandmother.
Oh, right. Right.
But that item, it's like a music box or something. He's giving it to like a stripper later.
Right.
So it's something that he just gives to all the girls.
Yeah,
the
it's
kind
just,
of thing.
Yeah, his line,
So-
essentially. Yeah.
So you essentially got to see clearly, like this is why it's so good at like depicting like where she's coming
I
from.
missed
Is
that.
she's
That's good. Yeah.
she's used to these men being just so manipulative, so
Just saying
conniving
whatever
and
in order to get a result. Yeah.
exactly. It's like they're looking for their wants and their needs, and that's that. And when Igor says it, it's like
It's
you know
actually
it's
authentic.
true. He's just like, oh,
My
it's just my
grandma's
grandma's car. And then she's kind of like, oh,
Yeah.
like
I guess that
she's
was
like,
true. Because he wasn't using it to manipulate her. He was just like,
Right.
I actually do live with my grandma.
because it's not a gift. He's like, I
Right.
just have to take you home.
Right.
This is the car that I have. The transparency with this man is
Right.
just hilarious. And, it starts to really pull down those barriers. And essentially, I'm not going to spoil it, but I've decided I won't. But I will just say the final interactions between them in that last scene in the car is like so carefully and thoughtfully done.
Yeah.
And essentially what the movie ends on is she finally recognizes that, like, okay, he's actually just being straight with me. And then when she tries to do something back in her own way, it's from her background.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily the kind of sincerity that he's giving. But he reciprocates with sincerity. And when he does that, it like shatters all of her walls.
Yep.
And then that's where the movie ends. And you're like, whoa. And it just causes you to pause. And this is why my favorite part of the movie is the end credits.
Because you're left with that moment.
You're left with that
Okay,
moment.
Gotcha.
But you are left powerfully with that moment. Because
Oh, yeah.
there's no music.
It sticks with you.
It's just the windshield wipers because it's snowing. It's just the windshield wipers and the car engine running. And you just hear that sound throughout
Oh.
the credits.
I forgot about that.
And I was like, that was brilliant. That's excellent. Because I was just sitting there really thinking about that exchange. So it just drops this like bomb and it's like, you're going to need a minute to sit with that.
We'll give you that. We'll give you that minute. Yeah, I will say it crescendos perfectly for everything it had set up.
Yeah.
It tells the story it's telling, like I said, regardless of what you feel about all the subject matter in the film, the way that it ends it is extremely human, and it does it so expertly because you get everything from that moment, and it's only like whatever it is, 10, 20 seconds long, but it
Not
hammers that whole thing home, and you get all the points. Like
Mhm.
if you miss it, you're retarded. But I mean. You sit and think about it for a couple days, and you're like, man, that was pretty rough.
I think you and I actually had slightly different interpretations of that scene, did we not, when we left the theater?
I don't think so.
Or maybe we were more
I know
in
I
line.
was more vocal about it than you were. I think you were still stewing on it.
Okay, I might have been. Afterwards, I did talk with my sister about it because she saw it as well, and she had a wildly different interpretation of that interaction. And then I told her mine, and then she was like, "Oh, I don't think so." Well, yeah, all right. I guess I can't really refute it. It is in the movie.
No, I got that.
But that,
As soon as it ended, I was like, oh, okay. She was trying to pay him back for all this stuff that he had done, because she finally, like, I forget, there's like a line or something right after the whole grandma's car thing that where she was like, okay, he actually is being sincere. He's
yeah,
not been
there's a gesture. I just don't want to spoil it because I feel like
right.
we've got to keep some things sacred.
Yeah, definitely. But then she like you said, she tries to pay him back in a certain way, but then she realizes the like futility of that gesture.
Yeah.
But the way that he is still like reciprocating so sincerely, and then it ends with like she responds to it basically in tears, and then it ends. I was like, oh, okay, because like I said, I knew that it was telling those multiple things because it handles so many
Yeah.
points in that action. And it's not that long. It doesn't like feel like it has to hold your hand through the whole thing. Like you understand the emotional impact of that moment. I guess is what I'm trying to say. Is it was very clear what it was telling you.
Well, I
and
think
how it was affecting the two characters.
when I say there's like different interpretations, it's more like my sister's interpretation was more like just about like Anora's character development and kind of like she almost did like a psychological perspective. And I think ours was a little bit more like focused on like the exchange between the two of them.
Yeah.
So, but either way you take it, it's like they're all kind of equally valid. And but that's why it's effective because you're not going to go so far off base as to be off topic. It's like
this is not going to be wrong, probably.
Right. Whatever you take from it is going to be the correct interpretation.
Sure.
And yeah, I don't know. So it was a really powerful ending.
We got some wind. I'm going to take care.
Just leave it. I think it's cool. It's rad.
Feels good anyway. Like a water behind me is just like whoosh. But yes, it was extremely powerful and it was potent.
Yeah.
Like you said, I mean, go into it with everything that we've given you here. But it does like purvey that message expertly without necessarily feeling like it had to give you any more.
And it doesn't feel like it had to concoct some narrative about like a sex worker and what their backgrounds are like.
It didn't feel preachy. That's a good point. It definitely didn't feel like it was like, man, they're just a horrible negative stigma and we need to abolish every one of that. It was like, no, these are just human beings and this is what kind of their life looks like.
And it wasn't also so like contrived to be like, look how terrible it is for them. It wasn't that either.
Right.
It was just
actually had nuance.
Yeah, just nuance and just humanizing them. It was like, oh, that's just like her story. And then like he interweaves it so carefully. And the way Mickey Madison conveys that moment, you're like, look, I don't know. And it's almost like it's like you like project into Igor and Anora throughout the whole movie because you're like, whoa, and like and that's what's going to make the movie really rewarding to watch is like who you project into with each viewing. Because I think when you project into Igor,
or even Yvonne, in which case you probably should go get that looked at, go get that fixed.
Yeah. But with Igor there, he's kind of like shocked, but again, like he's so patient with her, he just kind of is like, all right, she needs to cry now, so that's what we're doing. But it was just interesting because it's like he doesn't know. Like he does not know what her background looks like, and we don't really know. We have like a snippet of it. It looked kind of ugly, and so now we're like, and so like when she kind of cracks there, we're like, I don't know what you went through, but I don't really need to know. I just need to know that you're
just need to be there.
You're
for
processing.
For
yeah, it's like I'm glad that you're like that. It wasn't like it meant nothing. Like these things do affect you, and there has to be a moment to like deal with that emotional work. So it was just nice to see it kind of actually reflect in the movie. So this is 5 stars. Are you not convinced? 5 stars?
Like I said, it's expertly made.
Okay.
My one reservation is just the like, and those are more moral qualms with it, I guess. So the exploitative nature of that, and like we've gotten into that before. As a film and the story it's telling, yeah, I'd probably agree that 5 stars is probably deserved, just because it does it so well, and it really doesn't it doesn't overstay its welcome with any of the, I mean, aside from some of those scenes. But even with the fight scene and stuff, with some of the ones that really take their time in making sure that it shifts you properly, or like, it doesn't feel like it's trying to hold your hand, doesn't feel too preachy, it doesn't feel, like it's avoiding nuance.
It hits the mark.
It does hit the mark. So yeah, I'd agree.
Yeah, I said in the last episode, which was actually like weeks ago for me, but I said in the last episode that you guys saw in The Brutalist that would win Best Picture, but Anora, now that I've seen it, it's going to give it a run for its money. So you'll have to wait to hear my final predictions later.
We'll have our predictions later, yeah. That's definitely going to be a fun video. What did, we should have looked this up, so I apologize if you can't remember off the top of your head, but what is this nominated for?
So it's nominated for 5 or 6 awards. It's up for
Nice.
Best Picture, Best Director,
Okay.
Mickey Madison for Best Actress.
That's fair.
And what's Yura, I forget his last name, but as Igor for Supporting Actor.
Also fair.
Best Screenplay and Best Editing. So that's the 6.
I'd say those are all deserved, yeah.
And the interesting thing about that is it's in, and like, I caught this early on. I was like, oof. Like when I first looked at the list, I was like, okay, Brutalist is a big contender. Perez was a contender. That was before I had seen it and all the controversy with that movie.
See our video on Amelia Perez if you have not already.
We actually haven't talked about the controversy with that movie yet, because that came out after we made it, so we're probably gonna have to do a revisit.
Yep.
It's worth talking about, probably. Okay. But Anora was also in that camp, as was Complete Unknown, because the thing that surprised me with Complete Unknown is that it was up for Best Direction. I was like, interesting. Okay, that now has a pathway. And then Anora, because like, if you're going to win Best Picture, I forget the exact criteria, but you need to be in for direction, editing, and screenplay. It's weird, and an acting category, at least one. So like, those are the 4 you need to be nominated in order to have like an actual pathway to victory. And it's weird that editing, I don't know why editing is so important, but it definitely is. If you're not nominated for editing, it's like you're out. So the kind of
you're talking just within the Academy Awards
within the
standards?
Oscars,
Yes. Okay.
yeah, not necessarily with other camps, but like within the Oscars, yeah, you need director, writing, an acting category, and editing. And Anora has all of those. And in fact, that's all it has. So it's like literally just like buckled down and is like, okay, these are
got the bare minimum, baby.
This is the bare minimum, but it's like all the essential stuff. Like there's nothing that it missed, because I think, like, if I'm not mistaken, I think Complete Unknown is not up for editing or something. So that's like the big red flag where everyone's like, that's its chances are out, which seems like ridiculous. But it's like a film has not won Best Picture without being nominated for editing in like 90 years or something ridiculous like that.
Break some records this year, especially
Maybe
with some of the other records they've been breaking.
Honestly, I feel like Anora should win. I think at the moment that's my choice.
Why don't you wait for the predictions video?
No, that's
You're
that personal flavor is that's not a prediction. I mean, my true movie of the year is like Dune 2 or Nosferatu,
also Dune
or Anora
or Dune.
But see, I don't want Best Picture's not good enough for Dune 2.
Yeah, best picture.
I want best Picture. I want Best Director. I want Best Adapted Screenplay. I want that one, because adapting that monstrosity of a book.
That's fair.
That deserves some credit. I want visual effects, and I want a music win. I want all of
that. Seriously, the fact that it wasn't eligible is ridiculous.
We're gonna have to talk about that one.
We will.
Okay,
we'll do a Dune video at some point for sure. But
we gotta close this out.
Yeah,
that was Anora.
Yeah, that was
Go
Anora.
see Anora.
Yeah.
It was great. It's definitely among the top movies on the Best Picture list.
Yeah,
it's right up there with Dune.
Yep. Cool. Thank you for watching.